In 2022, Bankrate found that 60% of Americans didn't have enough to cover an unplanned expense of $1,000. Whether you make a little bit of money or a lot of money, most people have lived paycheck to paycheck or have struggled to get their money in order at some point in their life. It's not a fun place to be, constantly feeling like you're just barely getting by every single stinking month. It feels like a constant game of catch-up that you just can't win. I know this just as well as anyone from back when I had $82,000 in bad debt. The good news is that it is possible to dig yourself out of the hole of living paycheck to paycheck or massive amounts of debt by learning how to manage your money using a simple 4-step process. Now, while the days of living paycheck to paycheck and massive amounts of horrible debt are way behind me, if I had to do it all over again, then this is exactly where I'd start. The first step is figuring out your after-tax income. Break it down monthly to make everything a lot easier. Since everyone's income is different, we're going to use the median household income of Americans for this example. It's a little bit more, but for the sake of round numbers, let's say it's $4,000 every month. You'll take that money and split it up into 3 different buckets. From there, the second step will be to take 50% of the money and put it into the first bucket. This category is money that's strictly for expenses that are considered necessities every month. Think of things like rent or mortgage payment, utilities, groceries, and insurance. These are the bare minimum things that you need to spend money on to essentially not end up on the streets. Definitely throw your cell phone in on this one because most people can't even function without scrolling through TikTok, 20 times a day. After that, the third step is where you put 30% of the money into the next bucket. The money in this category is strictly for discretionary spending every month. Now, some people would define this as wants. These expenses include things like dining out, entertainment, and hobbies. Then the fourth step is where you put the remaining 20% of your money. This category is for money that's related to savings or debt repayment. Think of things like money to start or top off emergency funds, retirement, paying down bad debt, or other long-term financial goals that you have. Being able to take this big problem and break it down into these 4 simple steps will help you get started. But I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't a little more that you needed to know to successfully manage your money and put it all into action. This is the stuff I wish someone would have shared with me when I started the whole process many years ago. When you look at this 50-30-20 breakdown and compare it to your current expenses, you might be scratching your head because, real life doesn't fit perfectly into a box like this. I completely understand that, which is why you want to use this as a guideline to start out. Flexibility is the key here. These numbers aren't a hard and fast rule. Always keep that in mind. You're going to want to try to get close to these numbers to hold yourself accountable, but don't stress out if it's not perfect. We're not back in high school and there is no test. So if you need to, say, adjust your wants category down so that you can put more money into paying down bad debt or increase your spending on needs, then don't be afraid to do that. Trying to fit your actual numbers into the 50-30-20 guideline is probably going to take some time to do so. So don't get bothered or beat yourself up if it can't be done overnight. You've most likely been living a certain way for a certain period of time. So that means that it's going to take time to readjust your lifestyle and get everything in order. Start with the easy low-hanging fruit, no pun intended, like for example, finding ways to reduce some of your food costs if that's an area that you think needs some work to get you closer to that 50%. Don't underestimate the motivation you get from small wins early on. Then you can focus in on the top 2 expenses most people have, which are housing and transportation. Since those are the largest 2 categories, it's where you'll be able to have the biggest impact. The goal with this whole thing is to get yourself in a position to have more freedom to do the things that you want, whether it's saving for a down payment on a house, investing more for retirement, taking a vacation, or anything like that. What you'll start to notice when you gain more control is that you feel a lot more comfortable and confident. The stress and anxiety that you might have around money starts to absolutely melt away, which is one of the best feelings in the world. Before I let you in on the next thing that you need to know to successfully manage your money, please help support my dog Molly and the free content on this channel by hitting that thumbs up button button, tapping that subscribe button, and notification bell as well. Ideally, you want your spending to align with your values. If someone would have just told me this when I first started, then the light bulb would have gone off above my head a whole lot sooner, so hopefully that helps. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Values? Oh gosh, this dude is gonna start getting all woo-woo on us. I promise you, I am not gonna get all woo-woo on you. For those of you anti-woo-woo people like me, you can just replace the word values with the phrase things that are important to you. The Stoic philosopher Seneca phrased it like this: you ask what is the proper limit to a person's wealth, first, having what is essential, and second, having what is enough. Perfect example in my life that might help drive this idea home is the fact that I don't value nicer, luxurious cars even a little bit. I think some of them look really cool, but I don't have any interest in owning one or spending the extra money on one. Because that sort of thing doesn't align with what's important to me, I'm able to take that extra money that I could afford to spend on a more expensive car and put it towards things that do align with one of my overarching values, which is, wait for it, freedom. Freedom for me looks like investing more money to buy my time back either now or at some point in the future. It looks like having extra money set aside so I can afford to be able to take a mini retirement if I want. It looks like having enough money set aside so that I'm not forced to work at a job that I cannot stand because my whole life relies on that specific salary. This process for me eventually got to a point where I was spending a total of 17% on both my needs and wants, then putting 83% into the savings and investing side of things. When you align your spending with what's important to you, everything changes. If you can figure out this sort of thing for yourself, then it'll be a whole lot easier to adjust your spending accordingly. Depending on where you're at financially, you might have to make some uncomfortable cuts and sacrifices to where you spend your money. If you're deep in the hole with debt, then just accept that this is where you're at and start working towards getting out of it. One of the biggest barriers to good money management is having any kind of bad debt. I cannot stress that enough. It is a constant drag on your financial success because all of that money that you're paying in interest is sucking you dry. Getting rid of that horrible burden as soon as possible should always be your top financial priority no matter what. Let me be very clear about something so no one gets my words twisted. Nothing I've said up until this point is a license to become a cheapskate to the point where you cut all of your expenses down to the bare minimum, sacrifice your happiness, and get everyone in your family to resent you. You only live once, and you work really hard for your money, so you shouldn't feel guilty about spending it. I am pro spending money and a bigger proponent of spending more of it on things that are important to you while cutting down to the bare minimum on the things that are not important to you. But keep in mind that you cannot let yourself get into the trap of, well, everything is important to me, so I need to spend money on all of it. Because if everything is important to you, then by definition, nothing is important to you. Once again, keep in mind that if you're someone who is in loads of bad debt, then the most important thing to you should be paying that off as soon as possible. In this case, short-term sacrifices need to be made for the benefit of your long-term safety and happiness. You can either use the debt snowball method where you pay off the smallest debts first, then work your way up, or the debt avalanche method where you pay off the debts with the highest interest rate first, then work your way down. I personally used a hybrid approach where I started with the debt snowball method to get that psychological win, then switched to focusing on the debt avalanche method to try to save some more money. One thing to watch out for when trying to manage your money either this way or in general is to not allow your spending to increase at the same rate as your income. Ideally, everyone should be working towards constantly increasing their income because that's going to be the fastest way to get yourself out of this hole. Because let's be honest, you can only cut so much money from your expenses, but the sky is the limit with how much money you can make. Increasing your income will make managing your money a whole lot easier. But you have to be careful of lifestyle creep. If you start making, say, an additional $10,000 per year, then sure, spend some extra money on something like a vacation to reward yourself if you've got the bad debts paid off. But be very careful when deciding to increase those fixed costs, like a more expensive car, home, or rent based on this 50-30-20 method when you get a raise. Sure, it might be nice to upgrade a little bit, but do you really have to take that $10,000 and increase your necessities by, say, say $5,000 per year? Could you maybe get away with increasing it by, say, $1,000 a year, then putting the rest into your savings bucket? Like I mentioned earlier, I don't even live by the 50-30-20 method any longer because I save and invest way more since that fits my personality and what's important to me. I also didn't mention it here, but I personally keep a budget every single month. I've been doing that for at least, we'll say, the past 8 years or so because it just works for me. I know some people are super anti-budget, and that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to mention it to you, so do whatever fits your style. As you move along this process and get your spending under control, adjust your percentages accordingly, but make sure it's matching up with whatever your long-term goals are. I've come up with some tiny habits that will have huge results with your finances, which you can check out in this video to your left next. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button before you go to help support my free content and my dog Molly. Check out the description for more resources and playlists to help out with all of your personal finance and investing needs. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.